He was Alfred Loewenstein, one of the most powerful and wealthy men of the 20th century. On July 4, 1928, under the watchful eyes of onlookers, he boarded his private aircraft, preparing to fly to Brussels. Unexpectedly, as the plane soared over the English Channel at an altitude of 4,000 feet, Lowenstein rose from his seat, smiled, and nodded to Mishwash before heading to the restroom. 15 minutes passed without him returning, which alarmed Mishwash, who then asked the valet, Fred, check on their employer. Upon knocking and receiving no response, Fred forced the door open, only to find that Lowenstein had vanished without a trace. Born into a middle-upper-class family in Brussels in 1877, Lowenstein entered the financial world at the age of 20. He was an exceptionally skilled salesman, capable of selling anything to anyone, and it was not difficult for him to persuade some of Belgium's wealthiest individuals to invest with him. Later, he amassed a fortune by providing electrical facilities to countries around the world, establishing his own investment firm, successfully entering the financial sector, and gaining prominence. However, despite his success, Lowenstein's reputation was tarnished by rumors of his involvement in drug trafficking. On July 4, 1928, two black cars arrived at Croydon Airport, where Lowenstein's private aircraft, the Fokker, was parked. The Fokker could be considered a custom-made airborne office, equipped with very comfortable seating and additional soundproofing, allowing Lowenstein to communicate clearly with his stenographer even with the loud engine noise. The destination of this flight was Brussels, a routine business trip for Lowenstein. After the two black cars stopped, Lowenstein and four other staff members, including his personal assistant, Mishwash, and two stenographers, Eileen Clark and Paula Beidelin, got out of the car. At that time, the mechanic, Schroebert, and the pilot, Donald, had already completed the pre-flight preparations. It is said that before boarding, Lowenstein called his business associate, Herbert Holt, to arrange a dinner for the following week. At around 6 p.m., with good weather and high visibility, the Fokker began taxiing and prepared for takeoff. Lowenstein waved goodbye through the window, smiling at the crowd, and the Fokker took off smoothly. During the first part of the flight, Lowenstein was dictating his next business plan to his stenographer. When the plane reached an altitude of 4,000 feet, he nodded to his secretary, Yas, and headed to the restroom. 15 minutes later, Yas noticed that Lowenstein had not returned to his seat and felt a sense of unease. She asked the valet, Rhett, to check on their employer. Rhett knocked on the restroom door but received no response, so he had to force the door open. To his shock, the restroom was empty. Lowenstein was gone. While flying at 4,000 feet, a multi-millionaire had inexplicably disappeared. After discovering Lowenstein's disappearance, the valet, Red, rushed to the cockpit door to inform the pilot, Donald. The plane was flying over the English Channel, and the nearest airport was Saint-André-de-Villefranche in France. If they had landed there, they could have immediately alerted the Coast Guard or organized a search and rescue team, and the flight would have taken only a few minutes. However, instead of landing at the nearby airport, the pilot, Donald, turned the plane and made an emergency landing on a beach controlled by the French military. Since landing a civilian aircraft in a military-controlled area was illegal, the crew was immediately arrested upon landing and interrogated. During the interrogation, the 6 individuals appeared extremely nervous. It took about half an hour for them to reveal that somewhere over the English Channel, their employer, Alfred Lowenstein, had disappeared from the aircraft. According to the recollection of a lieutenant interrogator, both stenographers were in tears, Mishwash was sweating profusely, and the pilot, Donald, was shaking. Was their panic due to their employer's disappearance, or did they have something to hide? After 24 hours, the French police concluded that the incident occurred outside their jurisdiction and thus had no authority to investigate. Later, the Belgian authorities conducted what they termed an official investigation, directly adopting the speculation of the pilot, Donald, and the mechanic, Robert. They believed that the wealthy businessman, Lowenstein, likely opened the external cabin door accidentally after leaving the restroom and fell out of the aircraft. According to the layout of the Fokker, the front of the aircraft was the cockpit, the middle section was the passenger cabin, and the rear contained the restroom and the external cabin door. There was a door separating the passenger cabin from the restroom, and the restroom door faced the external cabin door. Even though the external cabin door was just a step away from the restroom, the conclusion of the Belgian authorities' investigation seemed unbelievable. On July 12, 1928, British aviation accident investigators tested Lowenstein's Fokker. During the test, a technician attempted to push open the external cabin door while the Fokker was flying at 4,000 feet. Due to the immense air pressure, the door could only open a maximum of 6 inches, approximately 150 millimeters. Therefore, it was theoretically impossible for someone to open the external cabin door and jump out during the flight. 2 weeks after the incident, a fishing boat working off the French coast discovered a bloated body. But was it really the wealthy businessman, Lowenstein? From the decomposed body, apart from silk underwear, socks, and shoes, they found a watch inscribed with the name Alfred Lowenstein. A forensic examination later revealed that the deceased had multiple fractures and was alive when he fell into the water. A small amount of alcohol was detected in his blood, but there were no signs of poisoning. It was confirmed that Lowenstein had indeed fallen from 4,000 feet and died. The autopsy was arranged by Lowenstein's wife, Madeline, who seemed to want to convey to the public that Lowenstein had no signs of poisoning and that no one had intended to harm him. It was all just an accident. Lowenstein and Madeline were married in 1908. He came from an upper-class family in Belgium, and their marriage seemed more like a business partnership, as they never lived together and led separate lives. Lowenstein preferred to focus on his work rather than his wife, Madrid. Later, Madeline inherited all of Lowenstein's wealth as his widow, and the tombstone at Lowenstein's burial site never bore the name Alfred Lowenstein, as if the event had never happened. To this day, we can only confirm that on July 4, 1928, Alfred Lowenstein fell from an altitude of 4,000 feet and died in the English Channel. But what was the cause? Was it truly just an accident? Some theories suggest that the Fokker's cab door was not properly closed before takeoff, and Lowenstein, upon discovering the unsecured door, was sucked out of the aircraft while trying to close it. However, this theory lacks substantial evidence. Even if it was due to the mechanic's oversight, the tests conducted by the British aviation accident investigators on the Fokker should have disproved this theory. Could it have been a premeditated murder? After the incident, the pilot, Donald, made an unusual decision by landing the plane on a beach rather than at the nearest airport. Additionally, it took about half an hour of interrogation for the crew to admit that their employer might have fallen into the English Channel. In 1987, author William Norris, in his book The Man Who Fell from the Sky, detailed his investigation into the case. He discovered that two of Lowenstein's business partners, Pam and Savasi, saw their company's value increase by $13 million after his death. This amount matched the value of Lowenstein's life insurance policy. Was this just a coincidence? More importantly, if it was indeed a well-planned murder, how did they carry it out without drawing attention from others?